Multilingual Redditors, what is your "they didn't realize I spoke their language" story? I'm American, but can read and speak Russian on an intermediate level. A few years ago while visiting St. Petersburg, I was buying tickets for the hydrofoil to Peterhof. All the signs at the ticket booth were in Russian, and I could read the ticket prices. The ticket agent assumed I didn't know Russian, and tried to tell me the ticket cost 3 times more than the stated price. I looked her right in the eye and said in Russian, "I see on the board here that the ticket I want is X rubles." Her jaw dropped, and the ticket agent sitting next to her started laughing her ass off. People are such assholes. Good for you for speaking up. Said something like, "You need to be careful when talking shit about someone in your native language, there might always be someone who understands you," in German while I was in Italy. A woman who was walking by responded, "Like me for example." Edit, thank you so much for gold, kind stranger. That's quite funny of her. Flemish guy here. Working as safari guide in Kruger area, South Africa. One time, my boss asks me to go pick a family of 4 up at the Klazery Reserve Gate, do an afternoon game drive with them, and drop them off again afterwards. This was very uncommon, normally we only do game drives with people that book a room in our own lodge on the reserve. So I pick them up, introduce myself and go over the rules, all in English. They reply in English, or at least, the dad does, and normally I can pick up straight away if it's someone from France, Belgium, Holland or Germany. But his English was Oxford English. So I thought, English people. Off we went. 10 minutes into the game drive I hear them speak in Flemish, and not only that, in my own dialect. Side note, every Flemish town has a dialect, we can hear what region, province other Flemish people are from, and if from the same region, we can often even pinpoint the exact little town or community they are from. Ooh, I was going to have fun with these folks. Found a few nice animal sightings, spoke English all the time, but then one sentence to the next, switched to their exact dialect. I thought, now they're going to be surprised. But nope, we all kept chatting in Flemish now. Only 20 minutes later, the daughter, maybe 10 years old, goes, "Wait a minute, he speaks Flemish." After all had a good laugh, I asked them where they were from. They literally lived 1 street away from me. It's a small world, folks. Edit, oh wow. Gold. Gold. I am one of those redactors now. Thank you kindly, stranger. I lived in South Korea for 3 years, but I never learned too much of the language. A friend of mine is 100% Korean but is very tall and was educated in America and New Zealand, so she has an American accent. Her co-teachers at her school all assumed she couldn't speak Korean, so they would talk shit about her constantly while she would listen on and feel terrible. She said nothing for a whole year until she had to speak at the end of year ceremony. The school offered her someone to translate, but she refused, and in front of 800 or so students and faculty members she delivered her address in perfect Korean. She subtly called out the coworkers that had spent an entire year calling her a foreign pig. Apparently one started crying from the shame of it. I wish I had got to see that. My cousin is a big white guy who studied for 2 years in Japan during college. He worked for one of the head of Honda America for a few years. When the head guy learned that he spoke Japanese, he would make sure my cousin was in all the meetings and phone conferences with the Japanese branch. My cousin would listen to everything the Japanese would be saying to each other and report it to his boss during breaks. As such, the boss looked like a psychic to the Japanese because after break he would address their concerns without being prompted. The boss made mad bonuses every quarter and always funneled a bunch of that to my cousin. Edit, I have never seen Clicksu not from that. This is based off my memory of him telling me this about 15 years ago, so don't know how precisely accurate it is. Most of these stories are a bit negative, here's a lighter one. My mum's a linguist and speaks about 15 languages fluently, and as such, I picked up a couple along the way. Most of my childhood was spent in Germany, so I have a firm grasp of the language, which doesn't really seem to match my appearance. I'm a 6'3", 220 pounds, black man, who speaks German. Now this isn't too uncommon a sight in Germany, but in North America, I'm a fucking unicorn. So I was standing at the bus stop one day in the heart of downtown Toronto, and there were these 2 60-something-year-old German ladies who were not having a good time. They were trying to find the art gallery and were fed up with the fact that they were having such a shitty time navigating because their English-speaking children had left them alone for the day. I didn't have anything particularly important planned for that day, so I turned to them and said something to the effect of, "You know, our city has a lot to offer if you know where to look. Would you two like me to show you where the gallery is, and a couple places you can get lunch along the way?" They nearly fainted. They were so happy that they found someone who spoke German and couldn't stop taking pictures with me to show their family, the guy that saved their day. I walked them to the gallery and gave them a bit of an impromptu walking, bus tour along the way. That was the day I gained 2 omas. Edit. Thank you so much for the gold, kind stranger. And remember, help those you can, smiley face. That was the day I gained 2 omas. The most valuable currency in the world right there. I was shopping with friends for clothes and these 2 ladies that worked at the store were outside of my fitting room speaking in Spanish. They kept criticizing me for taking so long to try on clothes and referred to me as dumb gringo and jokingly asked me if I needed any assistance in English. They didn't realize I was Hispanic until I came out of the room and responded in Spanish that no, I didn't need their help. They got so red. Edit. Somehow it's not clear to people that I responded, "No, I don't need your help," rather than just "no." Besides being incredibly rude, that's just sloppy on their part. Most Americans at least know what gringo means. My dad made me cringe so hard once at a hibachi place and the chef was Hispanic and he called him gringo thinking it was an affectionate friendly moniker among Hispanics. I wanted to just disappear LMAO. Edit. Did not expect this comment to blow up, at all. You guys pushed me over 100,000 imaginary worthless karma points, but it's still nice to look at on the screen, so thanks. Oh, I love this one. So I was working at a dental clinic in Germany, and these 2 guys walk in and start speaking in Arabic, not knowing that both I and my supervisor can understand it. The first guy, actual patient, is nervously telling his friend and this would never work, and his friend is telling him to shut up and play along, so the supervisor and I try to figure out what kinda game they're trying to play. Apparently, they were trying to lie about the patient's age to get his dental treatment done for free. I don't know how that worked, I was just an intern. Unlucky for him, his teeth told the truth. You can't fake being 16 when your wisdom teeth are all the way out. So me and my supervisor shut up about it, and I'm in actual pain trying to hold back from laughing as the friend is convincing the patient that we're idiots who don't speak Arabic and can't understand their trick. Of course, until I can't anymore and decide to discuss the case with my supervisor. Right there in front of them. In Arabic. I have never seen someone turn so many different colors so fast. Edit. Apparently all you people are weird and got wisdom teeth at weird ages. Asked my professors and they said at around 12 is the lowest they've seen, and even that is because of precocious puberty, from what they've seen. This is sore interesting though, so if you have any X-rays PM me what age you were when you took them and you can be my special case project of the year, smiley face. When I started working at McDonald's at 16, none of the other employees realized I could speak a fair amount of Spanish. A few of my coworkers would talk crap about me in Spanish and I pretended for a few weeks that I didn't know what they were saying. Then one day a manager told me she was worth me than me because she was bilingual. So I told her, in Spanish, that I was actually trilingual. The looks on their faces when they realized I spoke Spanish all along was priceless. My family and I went to Sri Lanka for 2 weeks to see where my mom grew up and general beach stuff. For some reason we were like the only people in the hotel we were staying at aside from a wedding party that left a day after we got there. A few days in there was another family staying there, I believe from Suriname, and we were all chilling at the pool and decided to play a game of water polo against each other. Things got exciting and one of the daughters yelled out something in Dutch like, "Go for the big fat guy." My Dutch dad replied, "What big fat guy?" and everybody laughed. Just a simple story, but it was pretty sweet. Me and my friend were sharing a cab with 2 girls we didn't know. Just decided to share a taxi with them, because it was a long way and we wanted to save some money. They started speaking Swedish, not knowing my friend is also Finnish Swede. Her mother language is Swedish, she has been in Swedish school, but is Finn and speaks Finnish fluently. I understand Swedish but I was too drunk to care. Suddenly she texts me. They are planning to leave us with the bill. I texted that we should tell the driver, so my friend just said, "These girls will pay half of this, before they leave." He got the hint and didn't open the doors before they paid. Also another time I was in an airport with my aunt. She had broken her leg, so she was in a wheelchair, but because we were going to a beach holiday, we decided not to cancel it. Now my aunt has lived in Germany and speaks it fluently. I've lived there too, so I understand it well, but I'm not fluent. We speak Finnish, something just to pass the time when flight attendant asks us to go on the plane first. This middle-aged man turns to her wife and says in German, "I don't think disabled people should be allowed on planes." My aunt, who is a true badass, asks me to stop. I was pushing her wheelchair, turns to the man and says in perfect German, "I'm sorry sir, but I broke my leg and didn't want to cancel my holiday plans. You are being incredibly offensive towards handicapped people and I feel sorry for your wife. Have a nice flight." He turned red, couldn't even say anything to us and just looked away. His wife looked mortified. I have more stories if someone is interested. "I'm sorry sir, but I broke my leg and didn't want to cancel my holiday plans. You are being incredibly offensive towards handicapped people and I feel sorry for your wife. Have a nice flight. Fucking wrecked." This is something I can only dream of saying but can only coherently put together 4 hours later in the shower. The people at the Chinese food place on my campus spoke Chinese to the door exchange students. But even though I spoke Chinese, I just always spoke English to them since I have an accent when I speak Chinese. But one day I got all meat no rice since I had a rice maker at home. And when I was paying, the lady says to the person beside her, "Fat ass wants meat no rice." And I responded in Chinese, "Actually I have rice at home." They didn't charge me for the order and started giving me a bit extra whenever I go there. Edit, didn't see all the replies, but everyone saying they probably weren't saying it in an insulting way is correct. They were saying "fat ass" more along the lines of fatty, or tubby. Pon Z, I think that's the phonetic spelling of what they said? Not really sure how to spell it tbh. Half my family is Chinese. Regardless, you mentioned an accent. My dad learned Mandarin by tape, online video. The rest of my family hate his Chinese accent because he apparently picked up the equivalent of a hillbilly accent online. While I'm Spanish, I don't quite look like the stereotypical Spaniard, light skin color, blondish, green eyes. When I was living in London I got into several situations like that. The top one was on the tube back home. I think there was a football game, Chelsea, Barcelona, and this couple was going to the stadium and I was standing just besides them. Tube had a hard stop and I accidentally fell a bit over one of them. I apologized in English as I didn't realize they were Spaniards too. They started talking to each other saying, "This fucking fat cunt nearly smashed in the ground," and things of the sort for almost 5 minutes. When they left the tube and he looked at me one last time laughing, I told him in perfect Spanish, "Enjoy the game, you little piece of shit." His face going pale as the doors were closing was enough satisfaction for a week. Edit, Jesus, my most upvoted comment ever. It's about being an angry Spaniard. Who would have thought? So I don't speak Spanish fluently, but I understand it just fine. I used to sell cars in Houston and as you can imagine, we had a lot of bilingual Spanish speakers come to buy cars from us. They never asked if my super clean-cut white guy self spoke Spanish, so I never told them I did. It was fun to have a couple that would speak English to me and Spanish to each other. They would literally tell each other everything, like how much they wanted to pay and their negotiating tactics. They would say things like, "If he offers to take $500 off, let's do it, but I'm going to ask for $1,000. So once they said yes, inevitability one would ask the other a product question in Spanish and I'd jump in and answer in English. The looks on their faces when they have that aha moment were priceless. Edit, side note, I used my powers for good too. Like me, only the other way around, many Spanish speakers understand English just fine but don't speak it well. I've done entire car deals where I spoke English and they spoke Spanish with no issues and they became happy customers. RIP, my inbox. Lol, who are these people like, let's communicate in this super secret language that nobody here will understand. Spanish. In Houston, Texas. A friend of mine was visiting my country for a few days from Italy. He was staying in a hostel dorm that happened to have a group of German tourists sharing it. He said anytime he was back in the dorm he would hear them laughing and making fun of him in German. Little did they know he speaks fluent German. He stayed quiet for the few days he was there and remained perfectly pleasant, speaking English to them when they had conversations but otherwise keeping to himself. On the last day as he was leaving the dorm he turned to the group to say goodbye and added, "I hope you all enjoy the rest of your trip," in German to them. He said the look on their faces was priceless when they realized he'd understood everything they'd been saying about him. Edit posted a comment on a small thread, "Went for a walk, come back to find it's blown up, whoops. I realize this sounds like the most generic story ever, but I'm sure my friend isn't the only person this has ever happened to, and not really sure how I could prove it otherwise. Edit 2, spoke to my friend about it since and he said the stuff they said about him was that he must be the weirdest person on the planet because he was traveling alone, and that he must be queer because he chose to read his book instead of talk to them all night. Nice group of guys. I feel like I would have been tempted to reveal my German so much earlier than that. I'm weak. Edit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not me, but my stepmother. She grew up in Japan and speaks fluent Japanese. She looks Italian and white. She has an olive skin tone, and since she is only a quarter Japanese, she doesn't look like she is from any East Asian-speaking country. One day her and some friends went to get their nails, both hands and feet, done at a salon for some girl time. The ladies who were doing the work were speaking fluent Japanese and were mostly gossiping about men and other things until they got to the feet part of said procedure. My stepmother's friend is a little overweight, and she doesn't have runway model style of feet. Well, the ladies who work at the salon are just starting to make fun of her in Japanese. Laughing and giggling, enjoying themselves in someone else's misfortune and looks. My stepmother said she let this go on for too long. It was about 5 minutes of them talking shit before my stepmother replied in Japanese. Her comment to them: "I didn't realize that we needed to look like princesses to get service here." Something along those lines. The ladies stopped, and looked at my stepmother with extreme guilt. They apologized in English and were silent the remainder of the time my stepmother and her friends were there. When I was stationed in Korea, I was getting a haircut and the hairdresser had like an assistant or a new person helping her get me seated and prepared. She says to the main girl, "He looks like a baby." I have a baby face and was like 22 at the time. I responded in Korean with, "I look like a baby?" She was really startled and embarrassed and noped out of there for the rest of the haircut. The main hairdresser took advantage of being able to talk with me in Korean, though. Edit, added a letter. I'm a Mexican who speaks Hebrew fluently. I was actually in the US in a deli around the time when the World Cup was going on in 2014. I was wearing a national team jersey and had been watching with family. We usually paint the colors of our flag on our cheeks, tradition. The game was over and we were getting food. So my parents, brother and I walk into a booth. We sit and the people behind us, 3 middle-aged women, start speaking in Hebrew saying, "Look at these stupid Mexicans," which should have been a giveaway since the word for Mexicans in Hebrew is Mexicanum, being loud and thinking they own the place. Typical. Well, I turn around, look at them and answer in Hebrew, "Yes, we are very proud of our country and the great job they are doing at the World Cup. If it bothers you, you can move." The look on their faces was priceless. I've never felt so empowered, until Mexico did a shit job and got eliminated from the cup. Edit, on our cheeks, these stupid. Also I know que no era penal okay? I am Swiss and Peruvian and live in Peru, so I don't look at all like a Swiss guy. There were 2 Swiss girls sitting behind me on a bus talking about Latino guys. Then one of them asked the other if she found me attractive. I turned around and said that I would love to know that too. The look of confusion and shame was priceless. Then we just all laughed. Now I've got 2 new friends. Edit, they were speaking Swiss German, Schweizerdeutsch. Edit 2, they both later confessed that they found me attractive. Thanks for watching our video. If you like it, please smash the subscribe and like button to support the channel so that we can create more quality content in the future.